What you're about to hear is part 2 of our interview with Eric Eastman, the podcaster behind MysterE's, where we talk about the psychology of beer. All right, what's another psychological effect that could come into play for the average beer consumer?
Oh, gosh. I think probably one of the funniest for me is the whole concept of overconfidence and belief perseverance. And what I mean by that is that, I consider myself, I'm a bit of a novice when it comes to tasting beer, and I recognize that. But what's so funny is we did a blind tasting with all of these different IPAs at bartender historian Joel's house. We got so many wrong. It was just ridiculous how bad we were. And here we are, like many connoisseurs of beers that really can't tell the difference. And what that's called is it's something called just noticeable difference, based off of a difference threshold where a flavor needs to have a certain amount of difference for us to tell whether we're drinking something that is, let's say, a West Coast IPA or New England IPA, whatever. And if that threshold isn't large enough for us, then we're just not going to be able to tell. But then you have, these aficionados, whether it's beer, wine, liquor, whatever, that have practiced over and over again. Their difference threshold is so minute that they can tell just the slightest difference between certain beers. But really, for the general consumer, we're not really going to be able to tell the difference between, a really good Oktoberfest and an Oktoberfest that's middle of the road.
Right. You mentioned wine, and there's obviously this is probably something we're going to talk about in a future episode, difference between like the culture of wine, the culture of beer. Mm. There are wines that are available at some high-end restaurants. It's like $10,000 a bottle. Ridiculous. These are not necessarily better wines than what you can get for $20 a bottle, at a wine shop. I've often thought you should sell a $100 bottle of beer.
Just to see where it goes.
Exactly. So explain
in a heavy bottle.
Yes.
Right. There is no better though. That's not a thing.
Right.
There is no objectivity when it comes to preference.
But So I think Samuel Adams sold a $400 bottle of beer. And it was like a barrel-aged, very high alcohol content.
Utopias.
Like 40% or something ridiculous.
Yeah, they still do that, I think, every year.
A good example, Gertrude. We've mentioned it many times in the show. And we just had Lagerfest.
Yep.
You guys had Gertrude on tap, which I thought was worth the price of admission.
Right.
But it's this thing that it's like it's not available all the time.
Right.
And it's never going to be available all the time.
No.
So if you were to do some sort of special, super barrel-aged, I don't know, a lot into it.
Yeah.
Explain the effect of that, how
rarity and price,
and how scarcity can affect consumer choice.
I without mentioning any names, we have a brewer here in Wisconsin that only sells the beer in Wisconsin. And
we can New Glarus.
New Glarus.
Yeah.
New Glarus.
They're brilliant marketing.
It's brilliant marketing. They
only sell them. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're in all their packaging has the state and the thumbprint. Their whole brand is just.
Well, I knew it was made in Wisconsin, but I didn't know
not sold anywhere else.
No,
so
in
it's
fact,
like 1970s Coors.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. And here's the thing: if you were able to acquire some and you're across the state line, and then you sell it, you'll do that as long as it takes them to find out. And when they do, they will shut that down so quick.
I did not know that.
Yeah. I look at Russian River Brewery with Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger. You have Pliny the Elder, which is, only sent to,
There's some stuff on the East Coast,
right?
But
Denver, one on the East Coast. Just maybe five.
And for them, it's a fresh factor.
It is a total fresh factor. They will not cut corners whatsoever.
Right.
But then the specialty is Pliny the Younger,
right?
Which is just one batch, right, in February or March.
Maybe a couple
batches,
but it's not a lot. Yeah,
but it's not a lot, and people will line up a mile and a half, 2.5 miles down, and there is definitely this aura about that beer. Like, is it And you talked about the objectivity of it. Is it that good, or is it because of the rarity of it? And there's no doubt.
And the
that,
tribal element,
Yeah,
because
yep.
you get to experience that line and be with those people.
Absolutely. It's huge. I mean, I went out there and just waiting in line for Pliny the Elder at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning.
Yeah.
You know, there was a piece of me that was like, I am a part of this, you know? So,
right.
I don't know if there's a psychological term you'd use for it, but I would consider it like the nightclub effect. Like a nightclub will not let people in just so there's a line, even if there's plenty of room inside, because they want to keep that exclusivity. And one of the best things, and I don't think I've mentioned this to you, last week I was here, you had a sign up that said that you had Gertrude, but it was only available for public club members.
Right.
And I thought, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Because it creates that's like the velvet rope at the nightclub.
I had people ask, they didn't ask, but they were all but asking if I can make an exception. And I didn't. Because that it's not just for me, it's for the pub clubbers too. Because if I open the floodgates, then there's nothing unique or special for them.
Yeah, there is. And I think you had mentioned that fear of missing out or FOMO. And that is actually a hard driving force right now in our next cohort, our next generation of young adults. That fear of missing out is more powerful in our current crop coming through that are going to be our beer drinkers right now. And that is huge. And that tribalism is
I was about to say that word, tribalism, again. I've complained about it a lot. How people will they wear the clothes representing their favorite brewery in this context, and then they piss on every other brewery that down the street. But now I think that's actually changing. I think no one's brand loyal anymore. Well, not no one, but there's a certain amount of people that support everyone, and I think that's great. But it's also kind of the other side of that equation. You need loyalty to run a business. So we're kind of seeing the
one of the effects I've heard is that back in the day when we were growing up, you'd have a record collection, and to assemble a record collection was hard because it was physical media. I remember going to college and I saw this guy. He had like bootlegs of the Beatles from Hamburg and all this stuff. You could never find this anywhere. All of that is available instantly today online.
Yep.
Everybody can get access to it. So music is no longer this thing where you can be selective. And the argument that I've heard is a lot of this has changed to like food and beverage because it's tied to something physical. You cannot digitize
it. It's a time and place.
And so people have become food snobs. They become wine snobs. They become beer snobs.
Right.
Precisely because
you can't record food and beer.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yet.
So I got nothing. That is
someday that may be true though.
Right. It's like right now I have no response to that. I think that is absolutely 100% true. As you were talking, I was thinking about my 350 bootlegs of the Grateful Dead, and now all I need to do is go on re-listen.
Yeah.
And there are 2,500 shows, 5 to 7 recordings of each show, and so there is no.
And I always make parallels between beer and music as best I can, and this is where it always falls apart. There is no recording of beer. I mean, you can have a bottle that you say, but that's not the same. That's going to be different by the time you open it than when it was produced. There really isn't yet an analog when it comes to a performance being recorded and a beer being made and then savored 35 years from now. It's
the similarity is that just like every live performance can be different.
Yep.
I've come here and I've had, like, I thought the Fest beer tonight was really good. And we're talking about differences of degrees, right?
Yeah. Remember, it's all context too. It's all your atmosphere.
Like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I was like, wow, this is really good tonight. For all I know, it's the exact same batches that I had last week. Probably was.
Right.
But for whatever reason, I thought tonight was like, it was really good.
Yeah. So what is so incredibly interesting about, like, in this digital age where music, I mean, you can name anything and everything as a piece of this connection to digitization and social media and sharing and this share factor, right? That's out there. You know, you can go to a concert and this is the way I look at it with beer as well. You go to a concert and you record, 15, 30 seconds of a song, everybody you show it to, they don't get it because it's just different, So you can share, out there in the video world, in the internet world, you can share those entities, those aspects, but it's just different from the real experience, So like when I go to a Dead and Company show or Pearl Jam or whatever, and I'm there, and this is where I think the current new generations of everyone need to realize this, is that nobody will experience what I experience, and that's why you need to go out and experience it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so you have to be there. You have to be in the midst of it to really truly understand. There is no picture, there is no recording, there is no Instagram post, nothing that will
Right.
give you the absolute true dynamic of what
There's
that
no
is.
holodeck as yet.
There is
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
And when it comes to beer, like you all said, with beer and food, there are still people that will take pictures of their beer. They will take pictures of their food.
Right.
They will share those online, but it doesn't give you that full contextual experience. And I think that is the magic of the industry. I think, when you look at that psychologically, when I walk into an establishment, and I told you, Bobby, about my experience here, I love it here. The beer tastes better here. Yes, your product is divine, but it tastes better here because everything here is, for a lack of better terms, majestic. It is majestic. So everything tastes better. And I'm in the beer garden. The air smells better. It just experientially, it is that way. And nobody could get that from a picture, from a social media post,
Right.
from a Facebook post, from anything like that.
Right.
Nothing I could post online can really truly create that type of
And
experience.
I think that speaks to why, like, Germany, Bavaria, Czech Republic, and all these countries have embraced it as the core of their very culture. It allows people to be human amongst each other. It's a liquid lubricant. It's a social lubricant, but there's more to it. There's more. It's more subtle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
I totally agree. Gary, you know this better than anybody, as much as you've traveled.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've tried. You can't explain traveling to people. I can show people pictures. I've taken tens of thousands of pictures, but ultimately there's the boredom, the terror, the excitement that I've experienced for simple things that you can't express. And everyone's going to have their own experiences with that. And you just can't explain it through telling people or even showing pictures. You can get the gist of it, but you have to go out and experience it yourself. So let's say you're a consultant and you were to provide some consulting services to McFleshman's. What are some psychological things that they should consider in the process of marketing, selling, serving beer?
I will say we're thinking about adding a bell to all of our 547 handles, so that everywhere it's served all over town. So every bartender everywhere, it's integrated into the handle.
Is perfect.
There it is.
Oh my God. Ivan Pavlov would have a field day with that. So, I mean, what you've created here is amazing. If I'm an amateur, but if I were to, just because our historian and bartender is a good friend of mine, when you have energetic, passionate people that go out of their way to deal with that one person that's in the queue, the one person that's in the front of the line, they don't even look at the 4 or 5 or 6 people that are behind. That person knows you are giving them your full attention.
Right.
Right there, that moment, that is going to define their entire experience. Whether their beer is good or their beer is bad.
Right.
That's going to define their entire experience. And this is what I tell my students who are servers. So many of them are servers that work in the service industry. Both they become bartenders or they're waiters, waitresses, servers, whatever. There are certain subtleties that they can do to make people know that you care about them.
Right.
And I tell them this, like, you can increase your tips by 60% by simply repeating back what the person ordered. So
Wow.
by Joel saying,
Yep.
you want a 547? Okay, I'll get you a 547. Just that right there makes that customer know that you are listening to them and you are important. You're the most important thing
and
to them.
banter plays into this too.
Oh God, yes.
And
yeah.
most of the people, all the people that work here have that to some degree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's three legs to the chair. Where there's the liquid, there's the ambiance, and there's the service.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way I see it. And if any of those are not top notch, then the experience won't be top notch. So you're speaking to the service piece.
Yeah,
of
absolutely,
that.
because that's human behavior. That's what I study. You got the beer, and as far as the ambiance goes, what you have here with Irish pub vibe and the German beer garden, that is obviously. But when you look at the service and the people, that would be the one thing that, if I were to nitpick,
right, that
to have them that repetitive sort of piece where they know that, yep, you matter, you have my 100% attention. That makes that instantaneously makes such a huge difference.
I think you've touched on a huge difference between a brewery and a brew pub. That if you're just making the beer, that's really all you got to focus on is the quality of the beer.
Right.
But the moment you start serving the beer, then you're kind of putting in another dimension that you're going to have to, of serving people.
It's a path I chose because I want to connect the beer all the way to the end consumer. You can't connect it all the way to the end consumer in the same way unless you have a tap room and therefore a brew pub. It's not as rewarding to me. I don't think we make as big of an impact. I mean, we could spend money on marketing a big distributing brewery, but that only goes so far to reach our mission.
Yeah, and when you look at what the best brew pubs do, and they become like this part of a heavy influential piece of a cog of the community.
Yeah.
When you have that sort of identity, that plays a huge role, because you talk about those big three pieces.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about more of the outside of your realm, I think that just makes a tremendous difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, both psychologically, socially, community-wise, I think that's a huge factor.
The first thing we did when we built this place is we walked in. I don't have pictures in front of me. One day I'll pull them out. Everybody thought I was crazy for building this in this building, but I imagine a mezzanine at the front of our what would become our tap room, and the mezzanine fits within 1/4 inch of code. Everything we did was, we knew we had exactly 1/4 inch to work with. I'm not kidding you. And I said, we're going to make this happen because we want people to think we're busy, even if we're not. Because the first place someone's going to sit in this tap room, we knew even then, as we were conceptualizing this, would be on the top of that mezzanine. That's seen from the sidewalk. It's lit. It looks like we're busy, and therefore it becomes busy. It self-prophesizes. So I guess that's the limit of my, how do I put this, amateur or novice psychology at play, is we were already thinking how to get people in the front door, and we knew that
it's the Lemming effect.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
people go to places where people go.
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. So we seeded it. It's like putting a few dollar bills in a tip jar. You just have to seed it.
And whoever came up with the idea of putting a hole in the floor so you could put some stairs.
That guy is brilliant.
I know.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely
Nobel
brilliant.
Prize level stuff right there.
Hope the audience is picking up on who that person is.
It wasn't me.
All right, there's a lot more we can talk about with the psychology of beer and brewing and serving and selling stuff, but that's going to wrap it up for this episode. You can check out the Facebook group, or you can join us to support the show over on Patreon. And until next time, please remember to respect the beer.